You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Hello? Is that the famous astronomer, Sir Patrick Moore?
It is, very much so.
Any news on the space front?
Quite so. Elon Musk has just designed and developed 5 gigantic, state-of-the-art rocket ships. All members of Parliament, along with the American Senate, have first-class tickets aboard them, you see. They're told they're going to the moon.
Told? Where exactly are they going, Sir Patrick?
The new anomaly discovered recently astronomically. A huge black hole.
Your host, Philip Kinsella. Twin Souls is brought to you in association with a Paranormal UK Radio Network station. And I'm glad to say that we have a wonderful guest, Colin Skevington, on board with us today. And Colin is a director, producer, writer and editor. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Colin, first of all. He's a UK-based writer and director who has been making films since he was a teenager. His first professional role was as a runner working on a series of horror films in Australia. Back in the UK, he worked on a number of television dramas for HTV and Channel 4. He went on to work as the head of the film unit for a major UK-based charity, producing corporate campaigning and promotional films, as well as wildlife documentaries. He has created several television formats, including In the Dark, hosted by Julian Clary, which piloted with ITV in the UK and sold to 39 territories, and wrote scripts for the BBC Two entertainment show Full House with Francine Stopp, Simon Cowell and John Sessions. Colin started Moonwatcher in 2006 and has since worked for a range of commissioning bodies. He has become known for producing hard-hitting and thought-provoking social issue dramas, including Unbeatable, Our Secret World and Last Licks. The Lawson reflects Colin's love for telling a challenging story. Welcome on board, Colin.
Thank you, Philip. Good to be here.
And good to have you on board with us as well. I know that you've written, directed and produced a film called The Lawson. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, Colin, about how you got involved in television.
And, well, basically, I got involved in film. I've always been interested in films ever since I was a child, actually. I remember the first film I ever saw at the cinema was Snow White. And I was probably about 4, I think, and I was absolutely fascinated by how it was done. And it was, I mean, obviously I enjoyed the film, but it was this idea of how did this happen? How did they make it happen? And I always remember as a kid, I was always interested in what was going on inside a toy. So inevitably I'd usually take it apart and to see what was going on inside it. And of course I'd never be able to get it back into as it was, that always the springs would come out and goodness knows what. So I was always in trouble for that, but I always had this interest in what makes things tick. And so basically I started making films when I was about 13, 14, and my grandmother, after my grandfather died, he got a Super 8 camera, and I just went out and kind of experimented making my own films. And I grew up in a village, and friends would come and help me, and I kind of learned a lot just doing it, really. And so it's kind of like I knew stuff about it. I had this kind of inner knowledge about it, and obviously you learn as you continue, but it felt like it was there within me, and it just fascinated me. And I'd end up sort of hiring a village hall and show the films there, and I'd charge people a ticket price at the door, and it would raise enough money to do another film the following year or whatever. So it was a real journey for me doing that as a teenager, and then a kind of it was a difficult industry to get into at the age I was, sort of as a teenager, late teens and things. Yeah. It wasn't as easier. There's more opportunity now, but eventually I did end up going to Australia and ended up getting a job as a runner on some low budget feature films, and that kind of sort of opened up the doors to me learning a lot more about the professional side of filmmaking, the whole process with the bigger crews, and it just kept the whole thing alive for me, really. But sort of moving forward, I've made a whole range of films over the years, but particularly some things like social issue dramas. Because I'm interested in what makes people tick, so that's part of me, really. It's not just what makes a film work, it's also I'm fascinated with people, and of course ultimately I'm fascinated in the world we live in, and spiritually the world beyond. It fascinates me, where do we come from, why are we here? So these are the questions that they're kind of natural to me, and have been for a long time, really. And The Lawson, moving on to that, is a short film that we premiered in January in the UK, and it really is about it's a supernatural tale about following your dreams and being true to yourself, really. So it's got quite a deep message, but a very important message for our times, I think. And we've started to spread the film out slowly, and we're just getting the most amazing feedback from people. So it's clearly resonating with people, which is wonderful.
Yes, and it certainly resonated with me and my family, because we went to go and see it in your esteemed company. And I have to say, it's one of the most amazing films that really does leave you thinking. And it also addresses these key issues of what happens to us after we die, and about life also. And I know that your film kind of like takes the key points, because I think that most of the time in our lives, we do tend to step back and think, what would happen if I had done this, or what would have happened if I'd done that? And yet you didn't have the chance to do that. So your film, The Lawson, Colin, is absolutely incredible. And do you want to tell us a little bit, not giving too much away, about the idea behind The Lawson, your film?
Absolutely. The story is basically it's a 26-minute film, and but it has a lot in it. We've had people say to us that it's really like watching a feature film in half an hour, and it really takes you on a roller coaster of a journey. Basically, the story it's set in the UK. It's in a little village in the middle of the night. Suddenly the Grim Reaper walks up the path. It's 8 foot tall. It walks up to the path of this woman's house, bangs on the door, wakes her up, and she sort of comes down the stairs very precariously as the banging gets louder and louder, and eventually she plucks up the courage, opens the door, and she's confronted by this looming figure with its scythe, the figure we know as the Grim Reaper, and but clearly it's come for her, but there's actually a complication in her being taken at that particular moment, because she hasn't fulfilled her dream. And she had always thought she'd fulfilled her dream, but actually she didn't. So really the Lawson's actually a character that comes into the film, and effectively the Lawson is the agent of death for the Grim Reaper, and he is a character. He's an unusual character. He's got a charisma, but we don't know where he comes from. And basically he takes Sylvia, the woman, on this journey to the moment she lost her dream. And of course, as I said before, she'd always felt she'd fulfilled it, but she hadn't. So for her, it's a real testing moment for her, and it basically looks back over her life where she'd perhaps been given opportunities to take that journey, and of course she didn't. And really ultimately with the film, there are two themes in the film, really. The one is that death is not what you think it is, and that's very much in the film, because a lot of people have seen it now, and one of the most common things that people say to me is, it's not what you think it is. They watch the film, they have a sort of an idea of what it might be, but it turns out to not be what they think it is, and that's kind of good because it's exactly the theme of the film. And the second thing is that basically it's about living in our hearts and not in our heads. And that really is an important aspect of the film. Effectively, that it's saying that we, our hearts really know what we are, what our journey is. We just know instinctively. There's a kind of deeper feeling of knowingness. We just know. But our head will often tell us all kinds of things, why we shouldn't do something. And really, to me, the head is effectively our programming. It's the part of us that's been programmed by maybe our upbringing, by our parents, our society, teachers. There's all kinds of things, that expectations of us, that we're meant to be this, we're meant to do that. And, as time's gone on through particularly in the West, it's become a very material world that we live in. People are often judged about their, the kind of car they drive, the sort of house they live in, that kind of status thing. But actually, is it really what they want? Is that really important? Or is it actually being true to yourself that's more important? And these are the questions that really come up in the film, and especially, I think, because of this is the kind of final moments in this character's life. What are the most important questions for us at that point in our life? Are we fulfilled, or are we leaving this life with regrets? And for me, I think it must be the most awful thing to leave, not being yourself, really, and not living according to your heart.
Yeah, I really, one of the things that really struck home to me about your wonderful film, The Lawson, was also the special effects and also the way that the characters interwove with one another. And it definitely is something that draws very close to your heart. As you know, like you, have a great belief in the afterlife, and that we have certain choices on this path. And there are a lot of people on this planet who do feel unfulfilled, that they haven't completed their potential. And I feel that this film will open up a larger part of their mind or their consciousness to the fact that it's like saying it's okay, it's fine, because, we can only do what we can do. But at the same token, the film also inspires you to go and do those things that you didn't think that you could achieve. So that to me is one of the main messages that I got from the film. Definitely that it resonates with everyone, even for those people that don't really have much of an understanding about an afterlife, because you've made the film in a slightly comical way as well, which I found really quite beautiful.
Yes. I mean, to me, the humor was really important because, sometimes the humor lightens it. I mean, it is a very, it's a very serious subject in one level, of course, but it's also a subject where we are turning our perception of death on its head in the film. We're saying it's not what you think it is. We're saying there's more to this experience we have here on Earth than we perhaps realize. And I think one of the things is that we do know within us, we know in our hearts what we're meant to be and in life, or what we're meant to do in life. I just feel that there's a place for everyone. Everyone has a role to play on this planet. I do feel we come here with a purpose. And I think our role is to uncover that purpose, is to follow that part of ourselves that's deep within us. I know, people in the film industry, I mean, you talk to actors, and often younger people might say, can you give me any advice if I want to be an actor? And I know somebody once said to me, one of our actresses said, I say to young people, if you can't live without doing it, then you must do it. Because effectively, you can't just become an actor on a whim. It's got to be deep within your DNA. Because it's the kind of role where you're going to take a lot of rejection. It's going to be quite tough. But if it's within you and it's your destiny and what you're meant to do, and of course you've got the drive to keep doing it. And I feel with me sometimes, I think, I've had to follow my life in a very unusual way. In a way, it's not conventional. And but sometimes I've thought to myself, am I completely mad and insane, or am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? And when I see the result of people watching The Lawson and the feedback, I kind of think, yeah, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and I feel I am meant to be communicating messages to audiences that will open them up to a new way of looking at things. And of course, in The Lawson, we're not actually asking anyone to believe anything. There's no set way of believing something in The Lawson. It's effectively, it's how you perceive it. And that's really what storytelling is about. It's your perception of it. So whatever you feel is valid for you. And that to me is really important. It's not about making judgments. I think there's too much judgment on the planet. I think people are too readily want to assess somebody and make a judgment, of course. But a judgment is you perceive someone from your perspective, and the most difficult thing I think for a lot of people on this planet is empathy. And empathy, I've found, is quite lacking in a lot of situations on the planet. And you've really got to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes to understand what they're about, which is why we shouldn't really judge people, because we just don't know what their journey is.
No, and you're very much the messenger, because when I saw the script, your brilliant script, I mean, what's really incredible, as you've actually stated within your film, the message in your film is that from its first inception and then seeing it on the screen, for me, and I'm sure for many other people, was quite shocking, because I see you as like the messenger, because I know you're very spiritual. I know you have an understanding of the other side. Very much as well, your outlook is to find the good in people. And I know also that the film reflects a lot of your passions, your drives, your hopes, your dreams. So in effect, you have started your dream. You've started your journey with regards to this film, because you've created it, but you haven't just created a film. You've actually incorporated a very important message in that film, which a lot of people have actually been affected by in a very positive way, some very emotional. So that brings us to the part about, the reactions from The Lawson, because I know that it's won some awards. Tell us about that, Colin.
It has, yes. We were, luckily enough, we were selected by the Vortex Rhode Island International Film Festival, which is a big festival. And we were selected, I think, from 6,500 films, if I'm correct. And we were one of 60 selected. And we won one of 7 awards. We won the grand prize for the best fantasy short, which was amazing. We did go over to Providence and went to the festival. We had a fabulous time. Linda Marlowe, who plays Sylvia, she came with us, and Sean Davies, who's our associate producer. The 3 of us went, and that was wonderful. We had amazing feedback, and what was great was that the American audience, in fact, it was the first time it had ever been shown publicly, and the American audience absolutely loved it. I mean, they found it humorous, and we had quite a few people come up to me afterwards saying how it really had touched them, that it made them stop and think about their own lives. And so that was amazing. And then we won an award. We won a gold award at the Houston World Fest International Festival. And so that was amazing. We've also been selected for the European Independent Awards, the Rome Film Awards. Wow. And we've also been selected for a couple of other festivals, quite big ones, which we're not allowed to say anything about yet because they've not been announced. So it's really getting interest from quite a lot of people. That's the great thing, because for me, I want to entertain people. It's not about I want to get a message out to people and get people to look at things and perhaps think differently. But I'm not out there to preach to people about an idea of how life is or life beyond. Because at the end of the day, we have feelings and a kind of knowing, but ultimately, until you go back, you don't know. We're obviously reminded of it when we go back, but it's this thing of sharing it to as many people as possible in an entertaining way. That to me is the key thing. It's to make films that do have a spiritual side to them, but a supernatural side to them, but in an entertaining way.
Yeah.
So, and I want people to come out feeling uplifted, but also, if they can reflect on their own lives, that to me is the ultimate thing.
I think one of the wonderful things with The Lost is the fact that, it really does bring people together. And it's the most extraordinary film. It has a little bit of everything in it. I mean, it's got the humor, it's got the serious parts, it's got the message, which is the important part. And I think, I know myself that when I was coming to come and see the film, that some people was coming away from the cinema. And I knew they were making references to the film because I know you, and I know a lot about the film before I saw it. And that was quite astounding because that actually means it's affected people. I mean, you get people coming out of cinema saying, "Oh, that was okay, that was good." But to have reactions like that was something totally incredible. And I know that a lot of the fan bases have given their interpretation of how they felt, because the wonderful thing also is that you also do kind of like reviews to get the people's message across of how they felt the film was. And you've had some really brilliant reviews, haven't you?
Oh, we've had some amazing feedback from people. People who one particular person had said that they felt, clearly somebody who's very spiritual, but they said it really, watching it, they felt there were so many messages in it that she actually said she felt they were very accurate. And she said it really does reflect the fact that we do need to heal those deeper issues within ourselves that are holding us back from being what we're meant to be. And she said often this happens on ancestral timelines. So, which I do believe. I do believe that issues are carried through the DNA, and I believe that's what hereditary illness is effectively maybe an issue, an imbalance that's carried through a bloodline in a family. And effectively, that's what we need to heal. And we all have a theme of things that I believe that we need to heal and to find completeness in that area within ourselves. And one of the things for me was about recognition. I wasn't always recognized for what I did. I'd produce work and, I'd often get sidelined or whatever. And then I went through a whole process of healing that within myself. I mean, it took effort, but I had to ask myself, why am I attracting these things into my life? And I did that healing work with some support, and eventually I felt that I'd healed it. And the irony is that the recognition is coming my way and I'm not looking for it. That's the irony. I think when you've healed something, the very thing that you were looking for turns up without you looking for it. Yeah. And I think the reason why we're here is to realize our greater spiritual self. I really believe that. And I feel in The Lost, the character, she, effectively she's driven by a mantra from her mother, and this has driven her throughout her life. And that mantra has kind of kept her away from the very thing that she had dreamt of. And you see that those painful moments in her eyes at times in the film, and that missing thing.
Yes.
And I won't say what happens because it'll spoil it, but the film does have the most amazing twist at the end, which nobody has ever got. Oh, it's amazing, really. And, I've had experience of past life regression myself, and also life between lives regression through a hypnotherapist called Debbie Bromley, who did some what's effectively you're regressed in between lives, and it gives you interestingly a theme of you and what your journey is. And I always say to people, because I don't want people to just believe anything from my perspective. It's really down to individuals. Some people will say they completely don't believe in an afterlife, or they don't believe in past lives, and that's where they are. I'm not saying that what I believe is correct. Ultimately, it's down to us as individuals. But the one thing I do say to people is don't be afraid to explore it, because I think if it's like if you're a scientist, you've got to actually go out and have some experiences or do some experiments in order to find it. And you can do that by having those experiences and see where you go from there, basically. But I do believe that a lot of healing can be done when you understand more about who you are and what your journey is. I think you can kind of find a bit of release from that and those imbalances and find some peace from it. So I feel the Lost Night, for me, I hope that it will, it's entertaining. It certainly entertains people, but I hope that it will allow people to perhaps just stop and think and, consider, well, why are we here? Because ultimately, for me, it is the question. It's the biggest question. Why are we here? And I do feel in our society, particularly in the West, I think there's a great fear of death. And I think that death is something that, somebody said to me the other day, well, death is really the last taboo. Most people don't really want to talk about it. And but it is something that comes to all of us and affects us in our lives. And I do feel we need to explore it more and talk about it more. And I don't think there's probably enough of that going on. So hopefully if the Lawson does start some dialogue with people, then to me that would be great.
May I ask also, did you feel guided yourself to write this? Did you feel in any way that there was some alternative energies or people called spirit guides, angels, helping you with this project? Did you in any way feel that this was the case?
For me, there was something definitely going on. I'd really wanted to produce a film that would reflect the kind of storytelling that I want to do. A lot of the work I've done has been commissioned, so I'm working with commissioning bodies and people who, you're working within a framework. And so you want to be as creative as you can within that framework. But then I thought this is something I want to do. This is how I want to produce a film or create the kind of film I want to make. So I kind of just said, I need an idea. And it wasn't long. It was probably a week afterwards. I had, and I've said this to people before, that I had a daydream. And I basically in the daydream saw the opening of the film. I saw the Grim Reaper walking up the path, banging on the door. The whole, as I see it on the film now, is exactly as I saw it in this daydream. And when the Lawson appears, a lot of the dialogue, I remember hearing the lines. It was really quite full on, actually. But I didn't know what Sylvia's dream was. I had no idea. And I basically, I thought, well, I'm just going to leave it because I don't want to force it. I always think when you're being creative, you don't need to push things. You just need to listen to your intuition, listen to your heart and say, well, there's a time to write, there's a time to leave it alone. So I left it for about 4 months. And then eventually I went off for 2 weeks and I spent a week in a tiny little village, miles from anywhere, and I'd go for walks and I'd talk into a dictaphone, just coming up with basic ideas or storyline ideas, and I did a whole week of that. Yeah. And then eventually I got the story, and then the following week I wrote the script, and I was very regimented in how I did it. I'd do so many pages a day, and I'd work through it. But I have to say that for me, there were times when I read the scripts back, I can't actually remember writing some of the lines. That's the weird thing for me, is they surprised me, and I know I wrote they came through me because there was nobody else around and they were on the paper. So that was kind of quite unusual. That was quite strange. Also, it did affect me very emotionally. The film, when I was writing the end of the film, it really affected me while I was writing it. So I feel in a way I sort of was having the same experience that perhaps the audience get from it now when they watch it.
Yes.
Because often as a filmmaker, because you know it so well, you never get the same experience really that the audience does. So for me, the only time I've probably really felt that is when it was coming through. So I would definitely say, yes, there was something else going on. It felt to me like it was coming from somewhere else.
also had this really amazing ability of getting hold of the actors that you wanted as well for the parts in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible because one of the lead actors, Sean Knopp, I'd worked with Sean before, and I just saw him in my daydream as the Lawson. I just saw him there, and I knew exactly that he was the person to play it. And he read the script and absolutely loved it. We got to Linda Marlowe, our lead actress who plays Sylvia. Linda is a very highly respected actress in the UK. She's been acting since the 60s, I think, early 60s, and she's been in the most amazing films and television. She was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy in the movie, and she was in Terence Davies' film The House of Mirth, and she'd been in a lot of television here. She was in The Saint with Roger Moore in the 60s, and she read the script on the Friday and she said yes by the Sunday. She absolutely loved it. Wow. And there was kind of a lot of serendipity with the film, how people would turn up. Tom Linden, who wrote the music for the film, he happened to move to the village where I live, and he was at a Christmas party. And somebody said to me, "Have you met Tom and his wife?" And I said, "Yes, I have." And they said, Do you know what he does?" And I said, "No, we didn't talk about work." And they said, "Oh, he's a film composer." So we got chatting, and I asked him to read the script, and he absolutely loved it, and said that he would really love to write the music. And he's written music for feature films. He's a very accomplished film composer. So Tom was fully on board, and there were lots of incidents like that where people just came on board. Hattie Beanland, who's our cinematographer, somebody said, "Who do you want to shoot the film?" And I said, "I'd like an artist." Hattie Beanland, our cinematographer, I met her through her mother, actually. I was writing the script. There was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and this lady was there, and we got chatting. My friend who owns the cottage, she thought she was there, and she asked me why I was there, and I said, "Well, I'm writing a script for a film." And she said, "Oh, my daughter's in the film industry," and she introduced us. And I'd said to people I wanted an artist to shoot the film, and of course Hattie and I got together, and she read the script, and she liked the script, and she came on board. And of course she studied fine art. In fact, her parents are artists too, and so it was kind of, there was another example of serendipity with the film. So, I'm a great believer when you're doing something that you're meant to do. I mean, it was a tough shoot. It was difficult at times, but everything just seemed to fall into place. And one of the most amazing bits of serendipity was Linda Marlowe. She was appearing in a British television series which is very well known here in the UK called EastEnders, and she'd gone into that not long after she'd said yes to being in The Lawson. And of course somebody had said there were some publicity shots of her on the internet, the first episode in EastEnders, and ironically her character in EastEnders was called Sylvie, and in the photograph she was wearing red slippers, and of course in The Lawson she's called Sylvia. And I'd always visualize the character wearing red slippers. So it was kind of weird that went on. So for me, it's always looking out and observing and being aware that there are synchronicities, there are things going on around you. And when they're happening, to me, it's just saying, you know what, you're on the right path. And you're really moving forward with what you're meant to be doing. So I think, really, we all need to pay attention more to what's going on around us.
Yes, I agree. I think that, my understanding of spirit communication, and especially guides and angels, I mean, people may laugh, but we have to understand that they were recorded all the way back in biblical times, and no one seems to laugh because of their recordings of their actual existence. So why should it be any different today? One of the things I will tell you, Colin, that the film had on me is that it still has this lasting effect. I just, because it was so beautifully adapted, and the special effects are second to none. I mean, my goodness me, they're incredible. It's got a kind of like an angelic feel to it. I mean, you come away and you feel inspired. And I think that's the important part. I think people need that in this very dark and twisted twisted world that we're living in today, that more and more people are finding chaos rather than order. And I think your film is kind of like trying to gently coax them back into the knowledge that it's okay, it's fine, it's never too late to find your dream, it's never too late to execute what you would love to do, young or old.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, and I think especially as you say in these difficult times, I think people will say there's a lot of turmoil, but for me, I believe we are moving into a different era. Things are changing, and I feel that there is an awakening going on within all of us. And I feel that those things that perhaps we don't like that are going on, and we may not agree with, or they may make us angry, for me, that's an opportunity to say, well, why do I feel angry about this? What is it in me that's making me react that way? Because, and it is one of the lines in The Lawson actually, and anybody who's got a spiritual understanding will know this, is that basically the world around us is a reflection of us. It's a mirror of us. Yeah. And I know when I've had issues in my own life, I've only got through them truly by actually saying, why did I attract this into my life? What is it about me? And there's a lot of projection, I think, that goes on in the world we live in. There's a lot of people saying, it's somebody else's fault, or it's the government's fault, or it's always somebody else's fault. And I'm a great believer that you must find that within yourself. I mean, Gandhi had said, as we understand, that you must be the change that you want to see in the world. And for me, that's one of the greatest things that was ever said on this planet, I feel, because we do have to find, if we're looking for peace, then we must find peace within ourselves. And that really is the big message. And I think it's very hard because we've been pushed out into this material world. It's all about materialism. And of course, the more material you become, the more you are escaping from the messages within you, the message, the deeper part of you, and you're hiding that. So I think you've got to get away from the external clutter and spend some time and actually say, why am I here? What am I doing? Because inevitably we all end up, as Sylvia does in her final day, and that's the morbid thing for a lot of people, is this idea that there will be a final moment for you where all the day-to-day materialism and all those day-to-day things will come to an end. And I always say to people, don't leave your spiritual homework till the last minute. Always start. I really feel we should do some spiritual work while we can. And it's not to say that we should believe everything from all and sundry sort of thing. It's about you finding your way, your individual way forward. Yes. And I think with The Lawson, I feel watching it from the people who've seen it and the feedback we've had is it is making people say, yeah, it's made me question things about my own life. Am I doing what I really want to do in my life, or am I just doing it to please everyone else?
Well, I can safely say, Colin, that you're definitely on the right path with your life. Even though sometimes we tend to lose our way. This is long before The Lawson. You created The Lawson, but it's so wonderful to see how it's fired you and kind of like empowered you. And I do believe you said that you were considering of making this film into a number of films. Is that correct?
It is, absolutely. For me, I've always seen it as 3 films, and I already have the story for the second one. And what we're doing at the moment, we've had screenings. We're in festivals. We've had some screenings close to where I live, and we had 500 people over 2 days coming to see it. Wow. And we did it at a cinema. It looked amazing. It sounded amazing, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise when they saw it. And so we're getting quite a following building now on social media. But for me, it's now about finding the way forward within the film industry to take the film forward so that we can get it out to a much wider audience. And really it's taking that story forward, because each story will interlink. And so I basically have the second story, the bulk of the second story, and I'm also working on the third one. So, and we need to look at how we do that and how we go forward with it. And I hope that won't be too long before we're able to begin to realise that. So it's exciting to take it forward because, you know, it's that journey. I think it's a film that is going to open up doorways for people to consider all kinds of things, I think.
It does it kind of silently. I think, you know, when you're watching the film, The Lawson, and you're taking this all in, there's a shocking element that we won't go into, but you come away from the film and it kind of like works on your mind. It seems to kind of like fingers start to gnaw away at the inside of your mind saying, you know, hey, there's more to life, there's more to me, because the main emphasis is very much an individual experience of what the characters are going through, and you can kind of relate to that. And I feel your message you got across very, very brilliantly, and I feel that everyone got it. You know, there's not one. I know that there are some films where people have come away and they thought, what on earth happened there? I know that 2001: A Space Odyssey was one of them, where people were confused by the ending, and I know that Walt Disney's The Black Hole was another one where people can understand the ending. I mean, I could understand both endings because I suppose that I like you have much wider understanding of not just life here, but elsewhere and beyond this sphere.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I found really beautiful about your film, was the fact that it really did have, and it has an incredibly powerful message, and so beautifully executed. So I really would love to see more films in the making. So I just want your take on life after death, Colin. Obviously, you're a great believer in that. So your understanding is that we survive the process of death, and indeed we have done in past lives. So what's your take on that yourself personally?
Yes, for me, I've never really doubted life after death. My grandmother was very psychic, and her and her two sisters used to go to the spiritualist church, and you know, it's kind of in the blood, I suppose. But for me, I believe that we incarnate into a body. We come here, and it's almost like, I think it's with the Hindus believe that we're all actors playing a role. Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. You know, Shakespeare said all the world's a stage, and really I believe we are playing a role. It's like we're all in a movie, and you know, storytelling. Which films are obviously storytelling, that effectively it's a way of us checking in on where we're at and what our hopes and aspirations are of moving forward, and that there's a possibility to move. You know, a story will take you from great conflict into some level of resolution for a character. So it's almost like saying there's hope. And for me, I think when you've done your journey, I feel you do leave your body and you do go back into a different dimension. You know, some people call it you're in a different vibration. And you know, a psychic or whoever would tune into that vibration. And I feel in our very material society, we've kind of got away from that. And it's, you know, some people would perhaps see it as absolute madness, but you know, often people have little moments in life where they get an insight about something, or you know, that may be there. And I think if you're living in a very noisy world, in a noisy life, if we're too preoccupied with technology, that takes us further and further away from those messages within us. And and I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe it's possible to come back, and I feel that you know, you may come back to explore different things. I believe you can go beyond this, this solar system that we're in. I'm sure there's something else going on. You know, I've always believed in extraterrestrials. I don't. When people say they think it's crazy, I think it's kind of arrogant of us to think that you know, we're the only beings in this whole universe.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, regards to consciousness, you're absolutely right, because the brain is the facilitator to link in with these alternative dimensional forces. I mean,
yeah,
it's like the TV said, it's been designed as a physical object to collect signals that we can't see, and those residing on the higher dimensional frequencies is very rarely. I mean, a lot of people can't see them, but people who are sensitive or tuned in can, and communicate. And
yes.
as said, you rightfully said, Colin, you obviously were plugged in to some pretty amazing forces to download this stuff into you and to get this all out in the Lawson, because it is an absolutely incredible film. And I know, as you said, it's won some amazing awards, and there's still more to come, I'm sure. And the music as well is something that I found really very beautiful. As you said, it's very strange, the synchronicities that occurred, not just within the production of the film and people coming your way or you linking with them, but also the music, how the musician was basically at your table, as it were.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, Tom, it was wonderful working with Tom, because he just completely understood what it was about. And it was almost like a lot of it between us was kind of unspoken. There was just kind of a knowing, and he just knew. And often, when I've worked with composers in the past, it's not always easy to, how do you tell somebody what you want music, in terms of music, and you give them a guide track or whatever of music you like. But for me, Tom, he really did tune into it, and it just blew me away. And actually, the first time I heard his music on the film, we sat in his studio in London listening to the music on the film, and it just really touched me very deeply. And I knew that feeling. I always go on feelings. For me, it's about, does it feel right? It's not about thinking it through for me. We need to tune into the mind. The mind is important to get us to do things. It's kind of like a facilitator to do things within the physical world. But I feel the heart is the thing that's the truth. That's our kind of guide, in a sense, where we know what we're meant to be doing. And I just feel we've lost. I feel one of the things, we've lost the ability as humans, as we become adults, we've lost the ability to play. And I feel to be creative, you need to play, and you need to enjoy that ability to play. And often people say to me, when I'm working with actors, they say, what's the role of a director? And I always say it's to make an actor feel safe, because when they're safe, they can explore without judgment. So they may bring something to that character that I've not understood or got. And I mean, in fact, all the actors, when they came to the table to do our first read through or whatever, they brought things to the characters that I hadn't thought of, and it all came alive. And that's because I wanted them to feel safe, to be able to do their job. And to me, that's really, really important. And again, this is the same thing of, when you create something, whatever you do, you need to be at a state of play. Allow the mind to just drift. And I think, in a way, that's why meditation is important. For some, we can all meditate in different ways. Just walking through the woods or something, can just be a lovely experience, quite a meditative experience. So, or some people will sit and actually meditate and tune into something. But it's that thing of freeing your mind so that you can allow some of your core into you, into your perspective. I think that's really,
absolutely. And I think that because I see us all as instruments, conscious instruments. There are some people who the system unfortunately has kind of like programmed completely, dumbed down. It's not their fault. And there are people who are rebellions. They will use their mind to explore these alternative realities. And this is what really gets my boat sometimes, is when someone says, oh, it's the imagination. Well, we have to remind ourselves the imagination is not something that's in a box that you open up and pull something out. It actually can be created into a living essence. And everything that is imagined can be brought into this reality. And that is something that I find incredible, because belief shapes reality. And I believe that, when you have a dream, when you have a passion and you have a drive and your heart really is in it, I feel that these other forces will come in to celebrate with you, to mourn with you when you've been down and low. But I really believe that the drive within us can be so incredibly powerful, as you yourself, Colin, have actually demonstrated with something that started off as a dream is now a reality. And your film, The Lawson, is an incredible piece of work, an incredible, and if I use the word spiritual, I'll use it lightly, because anyone can go and see this film. They can be entertained and they can be informed, but there is an overall message that really does dig at the heart and the soul. And I feel that you've done an amazing job with regards to that. So you've got some things coming up this year, haven't you, Colin?
Yes, we've got some more festivals. We're going to more festivals with it, and which I'm not allowed to say what they are at the moment because they haven't announced it. So, but that's exciting, and I think what it does, it's lovely to go to other countries to show the film to people in other cultures, other countries, so that we can, see what that feedback is. And I feel, as you said earlier, it's not, I don't want people to think it is a spiritual film. It is on one level, but actually, it really is entertainment. Yeah. It's funny, it's quirky, it's bizarre in places. Actually, there's moments in it you think, what really is that, that's going on, and that quirkiness is I love that, because it's getting people to question it and thinking what it is. But the story does take you on this roller coaster, and it seems to grab people's attention from beginning to end. Somebody who came, we had a screening recently, about a week ago, and somebody came up afterwards and said they couldn't believe how quiet the audience was. They said they've never been in a cinema where it was absolute silence. She said that normally you can hear people stuffing popcorn or whatever, but it was completely silent, and it's amazing. And what I found was interesting, because the opening of the film is very spooky, a bit like the trailer, but then it becomes humorous. And what was lovely, as we've gone through different audiences, the audience begins to realize they can actually, that it is funny, that they can laugh. And in almost a way, it's a kind of release, this kind of sort of iconic image of a Grim Reaper. For some people, it does bring some fear to them, and then suddenly they're able to laugh, and they're thinking, it's not what I thought it was. Death is not what I thought it was, and it's interesting, because for me, it's all about the audience. I really only make films for the audience, because they're the most important part of the film, really, in a way. And we did the poster for the film, which I think people will see on your website, but basically I'd held the poster up, and it has the Grim Reaper on it, and we showed it initially. There were a couple of women that looked at it, and their description of it was they thought it was beautiful, and then 30 seconds later a guy came up and said, that's morbid, that's really morbid. And I thought, how fascinating that the two women could see it as beautiful, and a guy, I'm not saying it's because of male or female or anything, but it's interesting how it was such a completely contrasting view of it. And I feel that's what this is all about. It's about saying, well, whatever it is, if you have a fear of death, you may see it. I mean, I've had so many people say to me, oh, is it a horror film? And of course, on the strapline for the film is beneath every nightmare lies a dream. Yeah. And you have we have all these beautiful particles over the poster, which are quite magical. And I said to somebody, no, it isn't a horror film, actually. And I said, it's actually, what it really is hidden in plain sight. So it's almost like saying the poster is saying, look beyond the obvious. It's not what you think it is if you look at the obvious thing. And maybe that's what we do in life. We look at the obvious because it's easy to see the obvious. But the things that are more subtle, which is actually the spiritual world, there's a subtlety to it. It's finer. So you have to look, you have to observe, you have to pay attention more. It's not going to just present itself to you in an obvious way. And I would say to people, the greatest thing is really I learned is to, pay attention to what's going on around you, people, why are they behaving the way they do? How is that about you? Are you projecting on them? When you go out, do you see the clouds? Or do you not see what's going on around you? Do you notice the trees? It's about, I think we should be more observant. And I think as you observe more and you go beyond the obvious, that to me is when you start to really tune in and see the messages and what really is going on around you.
Well, I think that, with regards to your wonderful project, you've done what only some other producers and directors and writers are able to do without interference from, a lot of other people. Pan's Labyrinth is one of them that was very unique in the sense that very strange, but it's hailed. And I believe that The Lost will be exactly the same. It seems to be following along that lines where it's so different. People stand up and say, this actually is an incredible film.
Thank you. I mean, and I also say to people, I had a lot of people say to me, it's a short film and short films, they have a limited life in a way. And I would say no. I mean, I always point people to, in the UK, we have Wallace and Gromit and The Snowman, and they are very successful short films. And for me, it's not about the length of the film. It's actually, what's it saying? If it engages you? I mean, people came out and said they really felt like they watched a feature film. And I'm thinking, if you can go on that journey in 26 minutes, why not? Why does it have to be 90 minutes? I'm not saying it shouldn't be 90 minutes, but if you've got a story that will take you on a journey and keep you completely engaged for 90 minutes, fabulous. But I think there are a lot of films around nowadays that, and people say this to me in the industry, there's a lot of padding. And, we're filling up space, really, when actually perhaps we need to be a bit clever in how we do it. And the irony also, I think, when people say, short films, people don't watch short films. And I'm thinking, well, as we go on in life, we seem to get told that people have shorter and shorter attention spans. So surely a short film is actually better in some respects. So,
absolutely.
I would say to people, don't be put off by short. There are lots of fascinating short films out there, but you probably might watch them once and, not really watch them again. But if a film really engages with you, and one of the things we've had a lot of people come out and say after they've watched it is they want to watch it again straight away because there's so much in it. We did have some people come twice to see it, and they said it was like watching a completely different film the second time, because you do know something, obviously, the first time you've watched it, and it gives you a different insight to the second time you watch it. So it does become there's more to it than meets the eye, basically. So,
well, that's amazing, and that's absolutely incredible. We've got to thank you for having us on our show, Colin. We're coming to the end of our show now.
Okay.
But can I just ask, how can people get hold of you and this wonderful film of yours?
I mean, if people want to contact me, they can go on www.thelawson.com, which is LOSSEN, thelawson.com, and they'll see the trailer on there. There's lots of, I would say, go on the social media channels. They're top right on the website, on the page. There's lots of stuff. There's lots of interviews. But please follow us on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram. And there's a lot of information. There's a lot of behind the scenes images. There's all kinds of things there. And, they can put their email address in there and keep up to date on where the film might be screening in festivals. So they might find a festival local to them where they could see it. Ultimately, it will go either on television or it will go online streaming. There may be a streaming service that hopefully at some point it will go on soon. So there will be an opportunity for people to see it.
Brilliant.
And then obviously continue. And if anybody wants to contact me, they could come to me through my email address, and it's Colin, COLIN .Skevington, SKEVINGTON @yahoo.co.uk. So if anybody does want to email me about the film or anything, then I'll be very happy to hear from them. So
well, thank you very much indeed, Colin. We wish you the greatest success with The Lawson, and we'd love to have you come back on again in the future to tell us more about what's been going on. And it just leaves me to say thank you to Colin Skevington, for the producer, director and writer of The Lost, and a most incredible film not to be missed. So I would urge everyone, when you hear about this, go out and watch it. Go to the cinema and watch it. It's in your area. Thank you to all our listeners as well. And you've been listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, Twin Souls, and we wish you a safe night.